everybody. Sorry. Very happy to introduce G D Abson, who's going to start us off with an introduction to himself and his book while I have a drink and attempt not to hack longer.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Gary Abson. I write under G D Abson. So my books are set in modern Russia, in St Petersburg. So I have a Russian detective, Natalia Ivanova, who is basically in this kind of corrupt world of sort of Russian cops and everything. She's just trying to solve crimes and not get caught up in all the murkiness. So that's sort of what I do, really. So I don't know if I should wave books, but that was last week. I should always wave books. I know we're such starts, aren't we? There you go. So that's Black Wolf. My third one is going out. It has to find a publisher, but so in that was my sort of first one there. But that's it, really. So it's the trials of Natalia as she tries to generally not get killed and solve crimes. So that's it, really.
So I got a copy of Motherland and Black Wolf, actually, because you were very kind and sent me both, even though I won one in the auction.
Yes. Sorry about that. I'll just send you one.
It's fantastic. I really enjoyed the first one. I actually only bid on things in the auction that I wanted to buy and read, if that makes sense. So I was quite happy when I won them because there were things that sounded really interesting. Yours sold it to I Love Russian Literature.
Okay.
So I was just like intrigued by the choice of location. Why St Petersburg in particular?
I like a few reasons. One is that Martin Cruz Smith has got this, the sort of Gorky. I don't remember sort of Gorky Park from the 80s. So there's his first book in his series, and he has this sort of wonderful sort of hangdog detective called Arkady Durenko, and he's based in Moscow. So that was one reason. I just thought he's got Moscow. I'll stay clear of that. Don't. The other reason I just thought it'd be really interesting because it's the home of Putin. Putin grew up there. It was a big capital. It's a cultural capital of Russia. It's kind of where the government came from now, because it was all these St. Petersburg FSB officers that ended up sort of taking over the government in the sort of the thousands, really. So there's that, and and then obviously the kind of it's also sort of hints. It's very close to this sort of Nordic noir. So it has those sort of elements. It's very sort of close to the borders of, well, sort of mainly sort of Finland, but then you have all the it's kind of Eastern everything. So my sense of geography is sort of appalling, but sort of basically the Nordics. So you have those kind of elements as well. So it gets very dark, very early on, because it's sort of very close to sort of the Arctic Circle. So I just love that sort of wonderful kind of mix of lots of different things all sort of clashing, and these really great, beautiful buildings that were just designed by these sort of European architects, and that sort of contrast with some sort of very sort of low crimes and sort of all the sort of skullduggery going on. But if I waffle too much, can you sort of give me some secret signal where you just sort of wink, like sort of, or just
Waffling is fantastic, to be honest. I think it's great. Just keep going. Have you ever been to Russia?
Yes. So in fact, I went to St. Petersburg, and certainly for Motherland, when I was doing some research, I found a Russian cop who were basically, and I'd fire off all these questions to him, and then he would go off and sort of chat to his cop buddies, and they'd sort of sometimes they're quite obscure ones. What does the interior of this room look like, and various things, and then they would sort of all quite happily respond. You know, they were all really kind. So not the impression you probably have of Russian cops, but they were all, you know, but they just, you know, extremely helpful.
And is the reference to White Knight in the in Motherland a bit of a nod to Dostoevsky, who's got a series of stories called White Knights?
I'd like to pretend it was, but it wasn't at all. I just I just like the, you know, I think the weather is almost is almost a character in itself, particularly in sort of in Russian novels, and I sort of like that kind of, you know, this kind of sort of in the during the White Nights, it never really gets dark. It just kind of goes into this sort of weird sort of Arctic twilight, and so I just like that, and I thought it sort of worked quite well with you know, trying to solve something which you know was quite sort of murky as well, and the fact that people can't sleep as well, you know, sort of adds to it. But no, it's the answer.
It wasn't. Dostoevsky got to be my favourite Russian author. Absolutely love him. Do you have a favourite kind of Russian classic author?
Not particularly. I mean, I've read some Dostoevsky going back, but I haven't read anything quite, you know, I'm ashamed to say that I haven't read anything recently. I should read some sort of Boris Akunin, I think, but yeah, I'm not very big on, this is this awful thing to admit, but I mean, I'm not, first of all, I'm not an English lit grad, so my interest is more from the sort of Russian politics sort of side of things. So so that's why you know, I've sort of, my interest has sort of developed into writing rather than from the literary side. But
I am very not an English lit grad either. I just like Dostoevsky to read.
But yeah, I read Crime and Punishment. Must be about a couple of years ago, and yeah, I mean, I find it hard because and this is sacrilegious, but you know, obviously these novels are very much of their time, so I think these days they would probably find it very hard to get an audience, because just times have very much changed. You know, you probably couldn't have this great philosophical sort of digression in the last, you know, 50-80 pages of the novel in the way that you could sort of with Dostoevsky. So yeah, I mean, like the Crime and Punishment, you know, it's sort of the ending goes on to this sort of weird sort of you know, reconciliation of the sort of protagonist and or antagonist, and yeah, I mean, it's just a very different world. So
I think it has themes, though, and much like you probably explored in Motherland, that are consistently relevant to today. So the themes in Crime and Punishment are kind of still relevant. My favourite book of his is The Idiot, which is about a prince with epilepsy. I think it's very a little bit drawn on his life as well, because he was epileptic. Which I find really interesting, and I saw a play of that and it was really good. But yeah, Motherland, you've sort of drawn sort of elements out that you would think of as being very old school Russia, in sort of the corruption with the FSB and things like that feel very modern as well.
Yeah, I think that's mentioned, like sort of the buildings. I think that, and I feel that almost is sort of St Petersburg. It's just a sort of wonderful, beautiful city. You know, I sort of recommend people to go there if they haven't. It really is absolutely stunning. You know, as he's you know, is sort of built out the swampland by St Peter the Great, and it's just like these beautiful canals and all these sort of just, you know, wonderful buildings and sort of wide boulevards and trams, and it's just gorgeous. And at the same time, that, I was saying, it's you know, it was a city, say, in the 90s, so it was effectively run by, you know, the mafia, and you know, the mayor's office, and the, you know, the assistant, rather corrupt assistant mayor, who's you know, now the president of Russia. So it has all, you know, it's kind of one foot in, you know, in the heavens, and you know, one foot in the dirt, really, as and I just love that mixture. So
What I found interesting and didn't know was that it's all separate islands, so that they get cut off. Like I thought that was a really interesting thing I learned in it, was that they could get cut off because bridges were closed. Or
yeah, I remember getting really absolutely hammered with a local, and I think it was about sort of 1 in the morning. I'm just sort of like we're crawling out of some bar, and I'm just like, the bridge. And he's just like, oh my god, got to get you with this. He just sort of some taxi and sort of basically sort of throws him into the taxi. But now I think it's they've built I think it's a Western high speed diameter, which actually features in another book. So a lot of the, which sort of there's this sort of massive sort of circuit around. So a lot of the islands which were cut off, it's possible to get around it if you're driving in some sort of long tour. But yeah, when the drawbridges raise, you can find that particularly if you're walking, you could be stuck, or you've got to go on some sort of massive tour to try and get back in. I can't remember. I think there's something like 130 different islands. Obviously, some are just little lumps in the middle of a canal. But yeah, I'm waffling again. I'll shut up.
that's all right. I'm going to ask you one of our admin team's favourite questions, which is, which of your characters would you most like to go and have a drink with?
Ooh. Well, actually, I find Natalia. I'm very fond of her, but she's a bit prissy. I think that I should probably get a bit annoyed with me, and she would get a bit spiky. I'm not sure. Maybe her husband. He's sort of very his heart's in the right place, but he's sort of he's a pragmatist. So whereas Natalia is an idealist. I think you just find her a bit annoying because she's so driven. Her husband's probably just sort of trying to find the way forward of trying to be a good person, but at the same time make wrong choices. With Natalia's sidekick, I don't know if he's just a very likable person at all. He's probably a little bit racist. He's certainly very sexist, and he would probably just want to punch me after about an hour in my company.
Yeah, I don't think he would be someone I'd want to go for a drink with him.
No. So
sorry, I'm gonna get there in a minute. Have you ever acted out a scene?
Acted out a scene? No, I mean I talk to myself all the time. So as I'm reading, I'll sort of be talking through the dialogue, and my wife will hear me, and she'll just think I'm going sort of nutty or something. But I've never actually acted out a scene. No.
So, how many stories do you have planned in Natalia's kind of arc? How many would you like to write, ideally?
I haven't got any plan really. I've sort of done 3 so far, so that 2 are out, and the third one, it's got that sort of long process of, well, actually, it needs a publisher at the moment because the publisher of the first 2, Mirror Books, has stopped their fiction list completely. So all their fiction authors have been let go. So at the moment, I'm looking for a home for the third one, and my agent's going to start doing that in the new year. And then I'll just keep writing them. If I just love writing. One sort of see where they go. So yeah, I've got no aim to sort of end them or not. Or I do worry about Natalia, whether she's going to end up on the sort of downward arc if she keeps on the way she's going and just being sort of too spiky and very honest. That she's going to, particularly the way things are in Russia, that it's going to be sort of hard for her not to, become a cropper at some point. But we'll see. So yeah, no plan.
Do you ever tempted to write kind of spin-off stories about some of the characters?
Yes, definitely.
Maybe that origins. I'm thinking the guy who is like the CSI. He'd be really interesting to kind of read like an origin of.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of been thinking about this last few days. Actually, well, there's sort of a few things. One is that when I was writing Motherland, some sort of friends read an early draft, and in fact, when it was went through the process, some people just, I think from the point of view, I sort of wrote it almost as a two-hander. There was sort of an Italian, then there was this convict. You know, he was quite rightly put in prison, but he. And then it was sort of about his life in this prison, and he whatever. It's a guy called Osin, and lots of people who read it, those sort of early drafts, they really liked him, and I took out all this sort of prison stuff and sort of and I really sort of almost wanted to sort of recreate this sort of story and sort of think out how I could sort of bring him back in. But also, I just think as well that the 90s in St. Petersburg was, and particularly in Russia anyway, was just a sort of really crazy time. And I thought it might be interesting, say, to go back to Rogov, to, you know, so he's sort of come out of the, you know, the militia, or this is just be sort of before they sort of it evolves into the police as we know it. And so it could have him starting out, and maybe he's not quite as bad as he is now, and it could be that that's why he sort of ends up on the path he's on. So, or maybe sort of Natalia as a recruit or something. But yeah, I'm just sort of toying with those ideas at the moment.
Pam has asked if you got any idea for any standalones or future series.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably because I've got ADHD. I've just had about sort of 10 ideas going off in my head all the time, really. So, yeah, I mean, nothing specific yet. So, but like I said, you know, I was talking about the Osin one. That was a possibility as a spin-off. But yeah, I quite like the idea of almost going sort of a bit more into the thriller side, and I love the idea of these Russian military bases. You know, these sort of secret towns that have been sort of locked up, and they have the, you know, bits like sort of you know, where they were sort of doing sort of research into bio warfare or you know, just sort of nuclear weapons, or just, you know, a variety of other things that they, you know, sort of high tech stuff. And so they had these sort of very sort of walled communities where they're all quite privileged, and it was all sort of going to seed. And I think that recently they were caught because they're using their, you know, their sort of supercomputer to mine Bitcoin, and they got sort of collared by the authorities. All these sort of aging scientists have figured out how to make lots of money on the side. And so I quite like this idea of these sort of these people going a bit nutty in some sort of scientific community that everyone's sort of forgotten about. And I feel I've got to put a crime in there, so it's not comedy, but yeah, I quite like the idea of that.
Sounds good. Would you write anything sort of outside of Russia? To take Natalia outside of Russia, even?
Possibly. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, it's sort of a few years ago, I had a sort of flurry of excitement because I was basically the books were optioned, so by Viacom, sort of, you know, that sort of Viacom, Paramount, CBS stuff, which was, you know, all quite nice. And I went off to sort of meet people who are going to potentially sort of write it and produce it, and all this sort of thing. And one piece of advice is this is the team behind Wallander, the one with Kenneth Branagh, and they were there. I was talking to the scriptwriter, and he was sort of saying, you know, if I could give some advice, don't go abroad. Saying that, you know, just the reason is that, you know, if we're looking to make a TV series out of it, then how are you going to explain the fact that they're not actually speaking Russian? So because obviously in Wallander, you know, everyone's speaking English, and there's sort of, you know, with sort of regional accents, and all sort of pretending to be Swedish, and you know, or sort of Child 14 thing. So if you have everyone speaking English, pretending to be Russian, and then you go off actually to Germany or somewhere, they're going to be speaking English in Germany, and what the German people can speak English, you know, it just gets very messy. So I think for that reason, if it was going to be Natalia, it would probably I would generally stay clear. But just to give a sort of slight spoiler, and that the third book, about half of it is actually set in Estonia. So there's an exception to the rule, which is there's a lot of Russian speakers in Estonia. So they, despite the fact they're there and they speak no, Natalia and her husband are there. They speak no, obviously no Estonian. That they're managing quite fine on the Russian. So I did that just in case you know, the TV series comes off, and then they could still use that one.
Also, it's quite an unexplored kind of place for fiction, I would imagine, Estonia. I think there's a Peter Robinson story sort of set partly there.
Oh, is there? I didn't know that.
I interviewed him recently, and he was talking about it. Very beautiful place, isn't it, Estonia?
From what I know, I mean, I feel awful. If you could sort of, you know, just edit this bit out, it'd be great. But I haven't actually been there, so it was. I need to go. I mean, you know, when the book goes into more advanced, I mean, people start editing. I think it's just going to be a great excuse to go off to Tallinn and yeah.
It's amazing. You'll love it. I've been to Tallinn.
Have you? Oh, fantastic. So yeah, I'd love to go. So
we went from Finland. We went to Helsinki and then the ferry across.
Have you been to St Petersburg?
No, we were going to go, but then we got really confused because there's like 2 ways into St Petersburg, and one you needed a visa and one you didn't. So we weren't sure.
I think if you're on a cruise or something, you can get sort of a 2-day pass into St Petersburg. But I don't know.
The St Petersburg is high on the list of places to go.
It's an amazing place.
Sam has said that the research must take you in all kinds of directions. Has anything surprised you?
Sorry, what was the first?
So the research must take you in all kinds of directions. Has anything surprised you?
Has anything surprised me? I mean, I'd say that the Russian people I met were just lovely. They were just, you know, you sort of have this impression that sort of Russians are. And apologies to any Russians listening, that, you know, you have this outside, as an outside, you have this impression of them being quite sort of stern, and then people tend not to smile at you on the street. They think it's some sort of weird affectation. But the people I met were so welcoming and just so incredibly hospitable and just very, very helpful. So I think there was that. And it wasn't surprising. They really do drink. That wasn't a surprise at all. I don't know. I think it was just how lovely St Petersburg was, and just sort of wandering around. And, you know, I wish I'd sort of been there a lot longer, really, but to take it all in.
You referenced the book in your sort of the back bit that you use for research. Is that called Everything is True, Nothing? That's a really good read.
That's really good, yeah.
Did you use that a lot as a reference?
No, I think it was just more. I think there's. I can't remember the line in the book or something. I think it's how. I mean, the story. There go the dogs. There's I think it's actually taken from Hannah Arendt on sort of totalitarianism, the title, but it's I think it's a line. I think it's in Motherland where it's sort of talking about how this sort of corruption, how it corrupts people, and it just sort of changes them as well. So people don't, and when you've got all this propaganda in play, people just don't know which way is up after a while, and it affects them. You know, sort of that Natalia would just be, if she would just be a European cop, sort of who, you know, sort of middle ranking European cop is probably doing okay, just quite straight laced. Her husband would be the same. Rogov probably wouldn't be a cop at all, because I think he would have probably been booted out quite early on. So all it sort of turns things upside down as well. So it's not just, corruption isn't just this sort of big sort of top down thing. It just really sort of affects everyone's lives. It rots, really. I think that's the other way of looking at corruption. It's something that rots, and it just that people live in this world where everything seems possible, and in Russia everything is kind of like appears glitzy, and you've got this sort of, there's some great TV, and you have these sort of sort of these sort of massive towers and all that, but then it's also just not real as well. It's all contrasts with lots of the day-to-day life. But I'm going to stop talking now because I'm waffling. But yeah.
So what other kind of research did you do apart from the corruption? Did you have to do lots about sort of the weapons that we used and things like that? Because there was quite a lot of action towards, like, at various points. So trying not to give spoilers away.
Yeah, I mean, there's I can't. I hope I name checked him in the book. I can't remember if I did, but there's a guy who is a doctor, I think it might be Professor actually, Galeotti, who is a sort of complete Russian weapons nerd who writes he's sort of written, I don't know if I've got any books around, probably have somewhere. But, yeah, I'm just going to wave a book just so I feel that I've yeah. So this is one of his later ones, which is so this is about sort of the Russian mafia, really, Mark Galeotti. And so he's quite good, because he'll sort of put something on his blog, and he'll just be talking about the Russian police and how they're trying to get rid of this this particular gun and replace it with this one and all this kind of. So as an author, I'm quietly going, I'm just noting that one, and then I'll sort of talking to my Russian cop as well. I'll sort of ask him, so what guns were you using? So it's you have to go into that level of detail these days, because if you don't, people will pick you up. And I know there's sort of Russian crime novels where people will talk about they'll get into a Zhiguli and or some car, and there's a sort of archaic image of Russia that everyone has to be sort of driving some sort of ancient sort of Lada around the place that's sort of always sort of beaten up or whatever, and it's just not really like that. So it's sort of trying to introduce a bit of sort of realism as well, as to that the fact that a lot of the Russian police do actually, I generally in the books of certainly in Black Wolf and Bloodlines, a new one, they're sort of driving these sort of quite nice sort of Russian made sort of 4x4s and this kind of thing. So and yeah, I'm waffling. I got the wink there. Did you wink? You wink? No. But yeah, basically the answer is yes. Lots and lots of research.
No.
I'll be, oh bugger, they haven't introduced the Grok yet. They've still got Makarovs. So I better change that and this kind of thing.
What you're calling waffling, I would say, is really interesting answers.
You're really interested in the subject. You have to be aware that a lot of people aren't. So.
So the book set in Tallinn is called Watching the Dark by Peter Robinson.
Okay, I'll just Watching the Dark.
I know apparently he went there for like an author event, and I think it inspired him to write things like that. There's a really interesting museum about occupations and things there that's well worth a visit. Sam said that waffling brings out the best answers. He's telling you to carry on as well. And she also wants to know how it felt to find out your books would be translated into another language.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it's always yeah, it's just exciting. It's always a long process. So in fact, I can yeah. So that's all the titles change as well. So that is Motherland is sort of trying is Death in the White Knights and in German. So and there's a Black Wolf, I think, will be coming out sort of next year in Germany, which I can't remember the title, but it's something like Blood Red is the something. So it's very different, but it's and it's it's quite exciting to get these emails passed by my agent, and they're just sort of talking, oh, we really love Natalia, and we're a fan club, and I just love it. I really love it. But to get out there, and I've had a huge affinity with Germany as well. So I spent quite a long time there when I was younger on army bases, and I went there quite a few times as a student. So yeah, bring it on. Basically, more the merrier.
Would you be likely to want to go over for a book signing?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'd be really happy to. I mean, I'd be off like a shot if someone asked me to. But
would you ever have a graphic novel made of one of your books? Because I think they would lend themselves well.
Oh, that's interesting. I know people sort of said that about that sort of. I don't mean this in a big-headed way, but they said they're sort of quite filmic, and it's because I think that I almost have to have a scene in my head. Maybe I'm just very unimaginative. That I have to picture people talking, and then sort of have a sort of scene and think where they are, and I think because of that, maybe that would work. I guess so. And I think, yeah, maybe because they can be quite dark as well. So they have all these sort of different elements. So that I think quite often that would work in a graphic novel. So if anyone wants to do one, I'd be very happy.
Sam wants to know what your dream book launch event would be.
Oh, that's a very good question. I mean, there's some nice sort of palaces in St Petersburg. That'd be quite good. I remember sort of St Peter the Great's library, which is a sort of colossal room, book library, which I'll be quite happy to have it there. But my last, if I could just sort of do a bookshop plug, my Black Wolf was launched in Toppings in Bath, which is just my favourite bookshop, apart from all the others, obviously. But it's just such a wonderful sort of welcoming bookshop, and the staff are really knowledgeable, and it's just it's just I'm gushing, but it was just I was just so happy to have a book launch there, and very, very lucky. So I'd do it there again, basically.
Andrew wants to know if your books are available in large print or audio.
They are available in audio, so well-ish. So Motherland is on Audible. If you speak German, then you can. There is a German version of Tod in weißen Nächten, even. But I don't think Black Wolf. They didn't do an audio of Black Wolf in the end, so I think it's just. But Motherland's out there on Audible. I'll see if I can answer in 5 words next time. Like, yes, Motherland is in Audible. Or
no, just keep going. Honestly, it's fine. He also said that he's really enjoying the event. When you mentioned Russia, he can picture it in his mind.
Oh.
See? Worth all the extra work. And Sam wants to know what she says. She often wonders what drew her to crime as a genre. Like that you added as a genre there, Sam, not just what drew you to crime. Do you know what set you on this path?
I mean, it was kind of a midlife crisis. I think I sort of hit. I sort of hit my 40s, and I sort of already had the the late child, and I already had a motorbike and then crashed. And I think it was just that got married, and I think the natural progression was then to pack in my job and decide I want to be a writer, which is sort of a frivolous answer, but I've always loved reading, and I just it was just always my dream job. I mean, I grew up on a council estate in County Durham where people didn't really study English because it wasn't going to get you a job. You just, and I remember as careers advice of just saying, you need to start looking at the local factories and this kind of thing. So for me, it was just always, it was just something. It was just like, joining astronaut school. It just wasn't going to happen. And it was only as I got older and sort of got more confidence and just thought, if I don't do it, it's never going to happen. So that's the answer really. And I don't have an English degree. I just wanted to. I felt very angry about what was going on in Russia as well, and I think that that anger probably sort of shows a little bit in Motherland. I was sort of kind of scathing about the corruption, what it does to people. I just felt so angry, and there was a guy who called Sergei Magnitsky who was hired to investigate this huge theft. Where I think something like $280 million had been stolen. And it's a long story, but basically there's an investment company run by this guy called Bill Browder, an American. I think he's taking British citizenship now. And he was sort of coming back into the country, and they stopped him at the airport, and he realised there was something odd going on. They were sort of trying to kick him out of the country, and at this time he was already sort of trying to shut down his investment company. So luckily, he just basically started. There's another. I won't get another book out. Well, I could actually. 1 second. There you go. Red Notice: How I Became Putin's #1 Enemy. It's very good. And so it's about he shuts down his company, and then bizarrely the sort of Russian police raid his sort of offices of his company and the sort of representatives, and they start stealing his company seals, and so you sort of see this sort of stuff. And I have this in Motherland. So it's one of the ideas was that it was very popular pastime in the 90s into the sort of going into sort of Putin's reign, as it were, they would just have these corrupt state officials who would just break into a company. They would just steal all the documents, all the contracts, all the sort of company seals. They would just move the company to some criminal, pass it on to someone else. In his case, he managed to get all the money out of his company before they did that. So then they decided to give him a massive tax rebate or something, or they said that the tax he paid, which cost him like $280 million, they refunded it. These criminals who'd taken over his company said it, got signed on some like New Year's Day when no one was even noticing by some corrupt tax official. The money just vanished, and it was all these sort of majors in the FSB and everything else, and they went after him. They went after this the person who uncovered it, this Sergei Magnitsky. They put him in prison. They essentially tortured him, tried to get him to say that it wasn't what had happened. It was, in fact, he was part of a plot with this American, investor, and it was all just a complete lie. But it obviously, and Bill Browder is still being chased. The Russians are still trying to put Interpol onto him in the East. Every time he travels, and he'll go to a country, and then people will try and arrest him. And this is just because the Russians got caught, and the American sanctions are named after Sergei Magnitsky, the Magnitsky sanctions for human rights abuses. And it goes all the way to the top. So it goes all the way to Putin. They all covered up this system, and they're all in on it. And I'm still angry, and that I think that was what compelled me to do that, to write about Motherland and to actually write the book.
Sam said she's having a Bailey's coffee tonight. Are either of us having a beverage this evening?
I might have a beer. So that sounds. I'm trying to sort of cut down my alcohol intake during the week, really, too.
I'm having a medicinal gin and tonic.
Nice. Ned wants to come up. This is. Hey, what's up, Ned? This is. It's something spooking. I think it's because the oven's beeping downstairs, so he's coming up to tell me that there's this beeping noise. He doesn't like it. So.
I think dogs visiting are always a pleasure. But yeah. So hang on, where are we at? I'm reading all the questions.
I couldn't really look at any of that. I promise if I try and look, I'm going to be sort of down here. But
that's all right. So you've talked about with your mother kind of Gorky Park and things like that. What other authors do you really enjoy? Give us some of your favorite. I call them your shut up and take my money authors. You can buy without reading the back of the book. Do you know what I mean? You see the name on it and you're just going to buy it.
I mean, I really love Philip Kerr's. I don't know. There's he had this detective Bernie, who's set in sort of 1930s Germany and then goes through into 1960s, and I think it's kind of one of the inspirations for me, and it's to have a detective who's just basically trying to be honest and just get the job done, and just this very dark world. So he's in basically Nazi Germany trying to solve crimes. And similarly, you've got this David Young's. I don't know if you've interviewed David Young at all. So he has his Stasi Child. So he has this detective Karen Muller who's set in East Germany. So in the sort of 70s going to the 80s. I mean, Martin Cruz Smith was definitely a big influence. He's still writing. So he's so Arkady Renko is still going on. So they're ones I would buy. I mean, apart from the sort of the sort of blockbuster authors that you always get. David Mitchell. I love David Mitchell. I mean, he's not really sort of crime as such, but I just not David Mitchell, comedian. Obviously, the sort of I think he's sort of written recently. I like his sort of. It's it's quite eclectic. So I think his last one was sort of about sort of the music 60s music scene. But then he sort of writes his kind of sort of sci-fi ones and writes about Japan. But yeah, I mean, it's not crime, but I do. His stuff's always on my list.
What's been your top read of the year?
Ooh, Where the Crawdads Sing. Really, really, really loved it. I just thought it was beautiful.
Good.
How about you?
I can't decide between them, but high on my list are both Witness X by Sarah Moorhead.
Okay.
And the Bow Street Society books.
Let me just take some notes. So Witness X.
Yeah, Witness X is like kind of really clever crime set in a near future.
Okay.
Think kind of Philip K. Dick.
Oh, excellent! I would really like that.
It's so good, so good. And the Bow Street Society by T.G. Campbell. Another of my auction wins, but I'm quite a fan.
Okay.
The auction made me very poor, but I've got lots of good reads.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. It's all right. Well, I blame my dad. To be honest, it was his idea. So, but I got a lot of. But I haven't even read all the books that I got from the auction yet, if I'm honest. But I'm working my way through, and they've all been great so far. So.
I'm following a lot of. I think sort of true crime at the moment as well, and I probably might make me sound slightly nutty, but I'm sort of following a lot of the. I hate the word conspiracy, because when you sort of look at things like, I don't know, like you know, sort of death of Martin Luther King or something. And when some people have actually really gone into it, then you know, and there's a lot of history there that sort of never, you know, that the family found someone, but you put them on trial, and he was found sort of guilty. You know, they basically decided it was a I'm waffling again, but there was a trial of, I think they found someone who was a conspirator, and it was basically, they were saying it was a conspiracy involving the, you know, the American secret state, as it was at the time, and the jury agreed. And you know, it's one of those things that never really came out, that they were you know, there's this kind of investigation into it. And so a lot of those sort of 60s crimes I find really quite interesting as well. So I quite like these sort of I guess I have this sort of slightly conspiratorial bent in that regard. But
I like a good conspiracy theory, as long as they remain a conspiracy theory and you can laugh at them, and they don't become kind of things that everybody tries to believe and make everyone else believe. It's just a wild one that you can laugh at. They're great. Sam says, where have you visited for research, and where would you love to visit for research if you could go anywhere?
Well, St Petersburg, really. So where would I love to go? I sort of I had this idea of sort of I don't feel I'd love to go, but I think I was sort of thinking maybe future Natalia book would be set in Sochi, where the sort of Winter Olympics were, and I'd sort of like to you know, have something in the future where they can sort of go back, and I think again it'd be interesting because it's got all this Olympic infrastructure that is sort of thrown together very sort of haphazardly and quickly or whatever, but they get sort of quite a beautiful place as well, and I just think, you know, that, and then it probably has that sort of element of decay now that the you know, the big party's gone and all the money sort of disappeared. So I thought that might be interesting as well. But yeah, I'm afraid I don't really sort of think of these sort of idyllic desert islandy type places. It's probably the grot holes that are probably going to be more interesting to put a crime novel in.
I think that's still interesting. She wonders if there's anything you wouldn't write about as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like that whole to be a better word for it, but I don't really like that whole sort of torture porn element. You know, this kind of you know, gratuitous kind of, you know, sort of shock, you know, schlock fest. I don't like that. I don't like you know, this idea of you know, sort of using kids or whatever just to, or you know, child sexual abuse. I think there are just all these areas that I just I mean, I might sort of touch on them as a motive or something, but to do something where it went sort of quite deeply into it, I don't know if I'd want to. I just don't know if I'd feel comfortable, because at the end of the day, I'm sort of, it's kind of entertainment, and I would feel I'd feel a little bit dirty doing something like that. You know, it would just feel as if I'm always trying to sort of exploit it. So, I mean, I know that a lot of crime writers are, you know, what I think one of the problems is that a lot of victims tend to be women. They tend to be sort of young, and in fact, in well, I've sort of tried to mix it up a little bit. So in Black Wolf, there's sort of, you know, this thing about some political activist is found dead. But I think my take on it is that we actually, crime novels are mysteries, as the Americans call them, and you know, they are puzzles, and you sort of lay out these clues and everything else. But you need something at the end, something that makes you want to just kind of keep going to the end. And just to be controversial, I actually just think that people care generally more about women. If a woman's, you know, in the news, if a woman has been killed, it's not in a gratuitous sense, but I think if a woman's been killed, people would care more about it than, say, if a guy had been killed. But same, and probably same, certainly, you know, I mean, the news has sort of stuff, horrible stuff at the moment about sort of children, which is the same thing. But I feel almost that just something, maybe being a father, I just feel I couldn't go there. There was my waffly answer again.
You keep saying waffly. I say a good interview. So tell us, I'm borrowing Sam's favourite question again. Tell us your most recent scene that you wrote without giving away a spoiler.
Oh, my most recent scene that I wrote. I sort of tell you about the sort of begin. I would maybe not the end, but the. I'm just trying to think where to start. So in Bloodlines, which is the third one, which you know, I mean, I'm not quite sure when it's going to come out, and it starts off really in this. There's a guy getting his hair cut, and he's, you know, it sort of starts off, and he's there, or he's outside. There's a downpour, and then a woman sort of sees him, and then she's become very interested in him, and then he sort of ducks in to sort of get away from her, and then so there's some music playing, and it's one of his songs, and so he's this sort of this music producer who's suddenly become sort of reviled, and so he's in this. He thinks this barber's cutting his hair, and he's sort of trying to get this haircut that's going to make him look a bit more sort of more anonymous. And he thinks a barber doesn't recognise him, and then sort of gradually sort of dawns on that the barber does, and so that's sort of the beginning of the book really. So it's a sort of set an intrigue about, you know, what's happened to this person, because he seems okay. So why are these people treating him that way? And so start hairdressers. That's a one-word answer. Getting his haircut.
So, another of the group favourite questions. What's your most memorable moments as an author?
Oh, that's a tough one. I really enjoyed doing Crime Fest. So I was on a panel in Crime Fest a few years ago, and that was great because I've sort of I mean, I haven't been writing for a huge amount of time, and I sort of, when I started writing, I suddenly discovered there was this thing called the Crime Writers Association, and there was this thing called the Daggers, and I just remember sort of coming across it and thinking, oh, this thing I'm writing, I might just submit it. So about sort of 2 days for the deadline, I was suddenly staying up all night, sort of furiously trying to kind of get the, you know, the submission and the sort of 3 chapters and all those bits and pieces together to go into it, and then you know, because they announced the winners on a Crime Fest in Bristol. So then sort of going along as sort of as a punter, and then actually getting nominated for a couple of these sort of CWA awards shortly afterwards for the book that I hadn't heard about any of this. So so to do a panel at Crime Fest, and then to sort of hear in the evening to hear your name called out really as you sort of get nominated with all these, you know, the sort of hall full of, you know, people who are much more successful than me, which is wonderful really. Didn't win, spoiler, but it was great.
Who reads your books first?
Generally my wife. So she will quite often I'll sort of do sort of a few pages or a chapter, and I'll just sort of, you know, am I going off on one? Is this a bit dodgy or something? And she'll generally come back and say, yes, you are. Don't do that, or I'd get rid of that. She's quite ruthless. But by the time I sort of finish, she can't almost read it because she's sort of read all these little bits and pieces. So it's impossible for her to sort of look through it. So there's a friend of hers, Corin, who I rather unkindly refer to as my sort of Annie Wilkes from Misery. So she's generally sort of first on the list, really. So I usually sort of fire a copy to her to read, just because she'll basically break my bones if I don't.
Fair enough. A valued beta reader is what you could call her.
If she sees this, and she might do, then yeah, sorry. Sam
wants to know if there's anybody you'd like to collaborate with on a book.
Oh, that's a good question. So just conscious the dog just moved, and I thought he was going to sort of unplug something, but he hasn't, so that's all right. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I haven't really. I think I'd struggle to be sort of collaborate. I don't know. I've never really done that before, so I feel a bit nervous. But yeah, not sure. I mean, there's a woman called Kate Simmons who is we basically live in this town. We're the sort of two crime writers in the town. So she won the Bath Novel Award, I think. So probably it was last year, it might be the year before now. And I thought, yeah, might be sort of, I think it'd be quite interesting. It'd be quite handy as well, because we're kind of mates, so we could sort of go to the pub, meet up in the pub, and have a bit of chat about it, and do it rather than having necessarily some sort of big American, filthily rich author. But if anyone wants to, they are a filthy rich American author, and they do want to, I'm there for them. Yeah, Kate Simmons.
Good answer. You have about 4 minutes left.
Okay.
So before I get you to do a recap of yourself and Wavy Books again, can people buy signed copies of your books from you if they're thinking about gifting Motherland as a Christmas present?
Yes. Thank you for asking. I basically need to check, because I set up a website, and and it's kind of not as sophisticated as I'd like, but the idea is that you would sort of ping me some sort of PayPal thing if you're going through Black Wolf or Motherland. But I looked recently, and it sort of seemed to connect to the wrong book or charge the wrong amount. So I need to just sort of, if you go onto my website, so it's gdabson.com, you can order them through there. But I would just check to make sure. If there's any doubt, you just sort of ping me, a message on Twitter or something, and I can sort of sort out another way. But yes, basically yes.
Excellent. And finish us off, because you've been fantastic, with a reminder of yourself and Wavy Books again, so everyone knows what they're going to go.
Okay. Book waving time. So this is. So it was nominated for 2 CWA Daggers, and this is the first one. So it's about a Swedish student at University of St Petersburg. She goes missing, and at the time, my detective is she's been sidelined, so she's looking to sort of cases of domestic violence, which is a massive issue in Russia. And then she gets an opportunity, because she's nearby, to look into this case, and then no one actually wants to touch it, because for various reasons. And then it sort of builds up into this student is the daughter of a Swedish billionaire as well, so that's why there's this political dimension and a money dimension to it. So there's that. So that's Motherland. This is Black Wolf, which this sort of was based loosely around. So there's a guy, Alexei Navalny, who is presently rotting in a Russian jail after they poisoned him with a nerve agent. And he had all these activists who were doing this brilliant stuff. So they were sending these drones with cameras, and they were recording all these secret palaces of the rich, like Putin's palace, and all these people who are supposed to be earning $20,000 a year, just happen to have $2 billion tucked in their bank account. So, and they were posting stuff on the internet and doing this fantastic job. So in Black Wolf, it's about one of these activists who is basically found dead, and that's sort of the beginning. And so Natalia is sort of trying to gain their confidence. So of course, they didn't trust her at all. And so it's about these people who are doing this sort of drone footage of these. And I'm probably still waffling, so I should stop. But they are Black Wolf Motherland. I won't wave them around anymore because that would just be embarrassing.
You can wave them around as much.
I've stopped. That's it.
All that's left for me to say is thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me, Kaz. You know, it's just great that you're here, really, for you know, particularly for people starting out, and it's just been wonderful.